Jumbo, Jumbo Juana. Hello there, class. This is Mr. Brown, and I wanted to show you this mask. My sister got me this in Uganda. She met a tribesman who carved it himself out of a thing of wood. I'll try to remember to bring this the next time I come to class. It just hangs out in my room. But yeah, anyway, today is African cultures, and I'm going to split this up into two parts. Today's lesson is going to be all about what's been going on in Africa for the vast majority of human history. And next time I'm going to tell you what happens when white people show up. Short answer is not a lot of good stuff. But all right. So anyway, let's jump right into it. Let's start with a little greeting, actually. In Swahili, the word hello is jambo. And you actually know a lot more Swahili words than you would probably think. We'll watch a video about that later today. But anyway, African cultures. Check it out. So, you got all these people living their lives, all kinds of masks, just like the one. Yeah, this one right here. It's pretty cool mask. Definitely some selfie opportunities. And then Africa, a lot of cool, interesting cultures there. And then this is going to be the big topic for the next time we have a lesson. Things get pretty bad. All right. But anyway, let's talk about when things were going pretty well for Africa. So this is a map of Africa. You guys are either going to do it today or the next day where you have to find all these places on the map. But I'll just introduce it in the Prezi. This will help you out. So before Europeans showed up, there were a couple, it's more than a couple. There were plenty of countries in Africa that all had their own unique government systems, their own unique religions. And the big ones that I really have to highlight to you guys are sort of called the West African kingdoms right here. The two big ones were Songhai and Mali. I think Mali's right here in the yellow. So you'll have to know where they are the next time we have a test. There will be sort of some map parts of the test. Oh no. And then Ethiopia, way over here. Ethiopia, as uneducated people would call it. But yeah, Ethiopia over here. Christian country in Africa, even before Europeans showed up. So that's super cool. All right, so maybe on your notes you could draw like a quick little map of Africa. I think that'd be cool. And the real big ones to emphasize are Mali and Songhai and Ethiopia over here. We'll also talk about Great Zimbabwe. They were kind of interesting too. Oh, Benin, cool country. All right, moving on. So Africa has three major climates, and I want you to know roughly where these climates are. The northern part of Africa is the Sahara Desert. It is the largest desert in the world. If you don't know what a desert is, look outside. We're in Las Vegas. The next kind of environment to talk about is jungle. And the central part of Africa here, mostly the country of the Congo today, is some of the thickest, wildest jungle out there. I'll talk a little bit more about the jungles of the Congo in this class, but it's a very easy place to get lost, and it's the most biodiversity place on planet Earth. But then sort of between the deserts and the jungle is sort of this whole little green part here, this kind of lighter green, and that is savanna climate. Here's a picture of the savanna down here. So you just got to know these three climate types. Maybe if you see a picture, you can connect it. But savanna, I don't want to say it's halfway between a jungle and a desert, but it's definitely a couple plants here and there. This is where you'll find your lions, your elephants, all those cool animals in Africa. Yeah, my sister constantly tells me about animal stories. She's been living in Uganda. Uganda's like right here where my mouse is for the last, how long has she been there? Like 4 years? But yeah, she's like fluent in Swahili now, so she knows all kinds of stuff about Africa. So anyway, there are African climate zones. Know them, live them, love them. The desert, the jungle, the savanna. All right. So Africa is where humans sort of first got our big evolutionary push. And I believe the first humans came out of Ethiopia. So we're all African when you really get down to it. So own that. It's the thing about Africa is that's where some of the biggest, most wild animals are in the world. And there's some historical precedents saying that once humans first kind of control nature, then they can really get down and start civilizations and start to, I don't know, develop technologies and all that other stuff. And there definitely were African civilizations who did that. I'm going to teach you about them today. Yeah, the environmental hazards of Africa still are something serious, and my sister has plenty of stories about that. But the real thing I want to point out, and this is going to be a big deal in world history, is Africa is the richest continent on Earth when it comes to like mineral wealth. Like, oh man, 90% of the world's diamonds are in Africa, especially in southern Africa. Man, that place is like, I remember reading this story about some Europeans who explored South Africa. They got to a place called Kimberley, and they put a shovel in the ground, took the dirt up, and then it was just diamonds, like the whole dang thing. It's crazy. And also, more than half of the world's gold came out of Africa. So get that money. It's there. All right. Anyway, early human civilization, living it up. Then you got some gold miners mining gold there, and then panning for gold, and gold, gold, gold. Check this guy out. Just tons of gold. Yeah, so hopefully I didn't go through that too fast. But yep, got 70% of the world's mineral wealth, 50% of gold, 90% of diamonds. Yeah, man, this guy's just loaded. So much cash. All right, so there's so many unique African cultures, and I think I'm even prepared to say Africa may be the most culturally diverse place today, even. Just so many unique tribes are still there. But one thing that all African cultures have in common is the drum. Man, like the drum is a big deal in African culture. Yeah, it's other cultures, they probably invented stuff similar to the drum, but Africa had all kinds of drums. Gotta have drums. Big deal. And also, most African cultures did not have any kind of written language. But the way they kept their histories alive was through a process called orature. And orature is just, it's sort of like saying a story that people can relate to. But most African oratures all featured this kind of call and response format. So you're probably familiar with orature kind of stories if you're like a little kid. You know, for example, if I say, Old MacDonald had a farm, like what are you going to say? Okay? Like you're probably saying E-I-E-I-O. If you're not, then I don't know what's wrong with you. But they got way more complicated than just that. There was, historical stories of past battles, and like when, the storyteller would say the hero's name, people would respond with some attributes about the hero. And when they would say like the villain's name, they would like boo and shout out some insults at the villain. So that's kind of a big deal in a lot of African cultures. And there still exists in plenty of African cultures today, where there's a lot of kind of audience participation that's just sort of how history was done and how a lot of cultures were happening down there. All right. Everybody should be cool with this. Let's move on. So you got the drum going on, and you got orature style storytelling. Everybody gathered together, sharing the past. Okay, now let's get into some of the specific civilizations. The most advanced civilizations in Africa, sort of, 500 years ago, were all near the Gambia River. And look, I keep talking about if you ever get a time machine. If you get a time machine, go to the Gambia River, like 800 years ago or before, because by historical accounts, the Gambia River was just the golden river. Like 25% of all the gold in planet Earth came out of right here in these rivers in Western Africa. Like gold was almost not even valuable in that civilization because there was so much of it. Get the money, kids. Get it all. And a thing about these West African kingdoms is they were all Islamic. I mean, Islam was kind of spreading around the world, and it was in Northern Africa, so naturally it kind of percolated itself down into Western Africa. And a lot of these countries are still very Islamic today. I know that like Nigeria has some like Muslim Christian conflict today, but Islam definitely got there first. Okay, so no, Islam, the religion of Western Africa. All right, so check it out. You got the Songhai, the Mali, Ghana, and I know they call this the Senegal River. And this river right here, this is the Gambia. Yep, the Gambia. See, I didn't screw that up. And then, yep, they got all these trade networks going around, trading with people in Northern Africa, ultimately traded to Europe and Asia as well. And interesting architecture style over there. It's kind of like mud-based with wooden blocks to kind of keep everything up. So this is a mosque, actually, in Western Africa. And then check it out, African kings. I mean, yeah, you just replace the skin color of these people, and you're probably like, oh, it's like medieval Europe. And it was kind of the same deal down there. They didn't really have, like, knights and chivalry and all that, but it definitely was a medieval vibe in this culture, for sure. Got your kings and your guards and all that stuff. All right. So, the big civilization that has some pretty important historical context is the civilization of Mali. There is still a country called Mali today, and it's in the same place. But Mali was, they mined out the Gambia River. They got all the gold out of it. And there was just an unbelievable amount of money that came out of that civilization. Because everybody loves gold. And Mali was loaded. So famously, there was this one king of Mali named Mansa Musa. Here's a picture of the dude down here. Mansa Musa went on a pilgrimage to Mecca at around the year 1250 or something like that. And when Mansa Musa went on pilgrimage, he brought like 10,000 people with him. And everywhere he went, he just gave away gold because it was practically worthless to him. So, of course, you know, everybody wanted to be this guy's friend. And he made a lot of connections in the North African and Middle Eastern world. And everybody knew Mali was like the place to be. And Mansa Musa's estimated wealth is insane. $400 million. And that's in his time, which, you know, according to inflation, like, God, like, the amount of money he would have in today's world has to be in the trillions, maybe even the quadrillions. He is the richest human being who ever lived, by far. So much gold. And he was really, really into Islam, spent a lot of that money to kind of spread Islam around Africa, build more mosques. I know he also built a university in Timbuktu. So that's, he was, you know, he's a good dude. And man, you know, definitely be his friend. Share that wealth. All right, so I hope everybody's good with all this. And check it out. There's Mansa Musa. Went on this big trip all around Africa. Ended up in Mecca. So, yep, he's the guy with all the gold. Serious gold. Get that money. And people just living it up in Africa. You know, definitely a multicultural civilization. Making connections with other African cultures. I've got a really good TED Talk video about this. You can check that out today. All right. Mali was doing really good when Mansa Musa was in charge, but then, you know, a couple centuries passed, and I think it was like Mansa Musa's grandson was kind of an idiot, didn't really control the country that well, and Mali got invaded by their neighbor, and their neighbor is a country called Songhai. Today, I believe the country is called Niger, so Songhai and Niger are kind of the same thing. And Songhai conquered Mali, and they sort of took over their whole land and created this giant kingdom in Western Africa. And the guy who was sort of the conqueror of Western Africa was this man right here, Askia. And Askia was also a hardcore Muslim. It wasn't like a religious battle, but it was definitely a battle for who could have the wealth, who owned the gold. But the thing about the Songhai-Mali conflict that has a big part in world history is, yes, Songhai took over Mali when Askia was in charge, but then later there's kind of a rebellion and Mali becomes independent again, and it creates this conflict that sort of never ends. And I wish that this didn't happen in world history, because it's going to have some pretty serious consequences that I'll talk about next time. So be cool with your neighbors, kids. That definitely was not the case in Africa. All right, so I hope everybody's cool with Songhai and Azkia. Let's check it out. So there's Azkia going on the warpath, burning down mosques, being a hardcore dude. There he is riding in front of his legions, conquering lands, being a hardcore guy. This is all about 500 years ago. All right, but now let's talk about one more civilization, Ethiopia. They were on the total other side of Africa. They really did not have a lot of contact with Songhai or Mali. But the cool thing about Ethiopia is way back during, Jesus's time, some of Jesus's followers migrated down into Africa, and they were spreading the word of Jesus, and they got the king of Ethiopia to convert to Christianity even before Constantine did. So Ethiopia officially became the first Christian country in the world, and they've been a part of Team Jesus ever since. And it's kind of funny, actually, because when Europeans first get to Ethiopia, they ask kind of the normal questions. Do you guys have any gold? Like, do you guys have anything cool to eat? Have you guys heard about Jesus? And they're like, oh yeah, Jesus? Yeah, we know him. We know Jesus. He's been a part of our culture longer than he's been a part of your culture. So, yeah, good on you, Ethiopia. I can't say that their religion is entirely the same. I mean, they believe in Jesus, other stuff, but they're kind of a Protestant Christianity. They don't follow the Pope. They definitely kind of do their own thing. And I know that over history, Ethiopia got in a lot of wars and conflict with Islamic countries, especially the country of Eritrea. Ethiopia and Eritrea, they're finally cool today, but they've historically hated each other. So just, see an Ethiopian, they're a part of Team Jesus. So let's check it out. So here's, this is Ethiopian Mary and Ethiopian Jesus. I think that's little Ethiopian Jesus right there. And then here's some more images from Ethiopian Bibles. This is this is the oldest church on planet Earth that still exists today. So that's kind of cool. It got buried in Ethiopia. And then, got some Ethiopian guys. Got the cross. That's still the symbol of their religion too. And then Ethiopian Bible. Get it. All right. The rest of East Africa, super Muslim influences. Especially the countries Somalia, Sudan, and Egypt. So kind of, 500 years ago, Northern Africa was pretty much all Muslim except Ethiopia. And Southern Africa kind of had all their normal tribal religions. Later, they're going to get a lot of Christian influence once white people start showing up. All right, but anyway, everybody cool with Muslim cultural influences. So let's check it out. These guys are doing the prayer thing. Here's a bunch of kind of the dress in that part of the world. Everybody's praying towards Mecca. And all right, so there is one culture in Southern Africa that we sort of don't know a lot about. We found the ruins of some of the cities of this civilization, and we call it Great Zimbabwe. And they're kind of in, modern-day Zimbabwe. Who would have knew? And we've done excavations at the locations of these cities. It was a center for manufacturing. They definitely did a lot of stuff with gold and copper. I know we found coins from India and China there, so they did some trading around the world too. But we've sort of pieced it together that this civilization ended because they farmed too much of their land and couldn't grow food anymore, and they also had a civil war, of course. But there definitely was sort of a castle kind of building down there too. You can see it here. So, maybe if Africans had a little more time, they could have built some more stable civilizations down there. But of course, Europeans are going to show up and things are going to get really bad. All right, moving on. So, Great Zimbabwe, living it up. That's sort of the ruins there, and Zimbabwe. Okay, Central Africa, the most intense jungle in the world. I think I mentioned this in the previous slide too. And when people were exploring into Central Africa, they found these tiny humans. These guys are 3 feet, 4 feet tall max. And they're a race of people called the Pygmies. They spoke kind of a very basic language, But in a very racist sense of human history, when Europeans found these guys, they thought they were like monkeys, and they put them in cages, brought them back to Europe, and put them in zoos. And they're like, no, like, we're human beings, you know, we just living in the jungle. So rude, first of all. But I do want to mention that the Congo jungle was the last fully explored place on planet Earth. We knew everything about Antarctica before we had a map of the Congo. It's such a dense jungle. It's hard to even imagine. I remember reading this explorer's journal back when I was in college, and the explorer talked about how he had a group of about 300 guys, and their job was to like map one part of the Congo jungle. So his 300 guys, he put them to work in shifts, and they got machetes, and they just like cut back the jungle because there's just trees, bushes. You know, they gotta like get through. So they cut, and they got about 3 football fields in after a full day of work. Because I mean, it's just like, man, it's just thick vegetation. And so after a full day, only 3 football fields in. Second day, they get maybe 2 football fields in. The guys are just so tired, so exhausted. Some of them are starting to get sick. And then, you know, there's animals like growling at you and stuff. You're like, oh my gosh. So the third day, they get maybe another 2 football fields in. And then he says, you know what? Call it. We're only like 1,000 yards in. They start walking out, and they already found that the jungle was growing back, you know, 3 days later. And then they had to cut their way out of the jungle. So, geez, you know, that's a pretty intense environment. All right, so check it out. Yeah, the Congo. I know that Central Africa is one of the least politically stable places on planet Earth today. My sister has had a lot of conversations with me about that. But, you know, a reason why it's kind of hard to have a stable government is when you can't really get around, and it's so easy to lose people. And if you don't want to be found, that's a place to hide for sure. But yeah, check out some of the tribal cultures there. Pretty interesting stuff. Okay, and then look, there's thousands of really interesting African cultures even today. I can't get into all of them, but I've hit on the major ones, and we will learn what happens to Africa when Europeans show up next time. So check it out. Oh, well, I guess these don't zoom in. So we got some clay hair people, got the neck ring people. Like, man, I don't know what's going on there. But I've got a bunch of videos today to show you more about African cultures, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.